Welcome to Paris, the world's most visited city, which I've now added one to. It is full of wonderful landmarks and great urban fabric, but if you're anything like me, something that millions of locals take for granted every day is an attraction in and of itself. Paris is commonly cited as the world's best transit city, and while I don't fully agree with that claim, I wanted to see just how true it was. So over the next few months, I'll be releasing videos from my trip to the French capital and the broader Ile-de-France metropolitan area, where I tried to pack in as many trains, metros, buses, and trams as I could into just 5 days. This first video will be a general overview of the different modes on offer, how they work together, how to pay for them, a small travel hack, and a brief review of my Eurostar trips to get there. Don't worry, I didn't spend the entire 5 days just riding trains, but you know. The most obvious place to start is the Paris Metro. It, along with London and New York, make up the 3 most famous metros around the world that people who aren't into transit know about. The metro system has 16 lines. Most of them are quite short with relatively tight station spacing, even on metro standards. There's also no interlining, so they are indeed 16 unique corridors. Most lines operate with traditional steel wheel trains, but a few, including the super busy Line 1, have trains with rubber tires. This brings a number of benefits such as better acceleration and braking, which is useful for a train that starts and stops very frequently. Line 1 is also one of 3 lines that is currently driverless, the others being lines 4 and 14. More lines are due to be converted to driverless operation in the foreseeable future, and all of the new Grand Paris Express lines will be driverless from the start. The metro is the best choice for getting around if you just want to stay within the city proper, as most lines don't stray too far into the suburbs, and a couple are entirely within the city. Despite the sheer number of lines, it can often be the case that a trip that you want to make requires a change between lines. And this is important to factor into the journey time. Some stations like Châtelet and Opéra are so complex that sometimes the time it takes to switch lines is longer than the time it takes to walk from the station to your actual final destination. The stops being very close together can also make trips slower than you would like. As I hinted at previously, the Paris Metro will soon be getting 4 new lines from 15 to 18 as part of the massive Grand Paris Express project, which I'm not going to be making a dedicated video about, but I'll mention it when it becomes relevant. Now, what if you took the metro, but just made it bigger in every sense of the word? That is exactly what the RER is. Trains are longer, wider, usually double deck, and really quick. The RER is the best choice if you want to cross the city at speed, particularly for tourists. It connects to most of Paris's major railway stations more seamlessly than the metro does, as well as both airports and even Disneyland. The RER has 5 lines that are given letters to contrast with the numbers on the metro, and they even use squares rather than circles. The lines branch out quite extensively in the Ile-de-France suburbs, and you can sometimes get different service patterns on the same line, including some sections where trains can run express. So make sure to read the signs. For a long time, the RER was top of my transit bucket list, so I made sure to enjoy every opportunity that I had to be aboard it. As we'll see in my dedicated RER video though, which will be the first video coming out from this series, not all the 5 lines are created equal, and some are better than others. You may think that the RER is the commuter rail for Paris, if you want to use that term, and that's not entirely true. Closely related to the RER is the much less appreciated Transilienne, a network that is much more similar to other regional rail systems across Europe, and especially in London. These are services that for the most part terminate at the major stations at the edge of the city without running through it. They use similar rolling stock and the same suburban tracks as RER services, but often skip stops and go further out onto the main lines. Some even leave the Ile-de-France boundaries, which kinda messes up the fare system a little bit. Services here are not the most frequent, but they get the job done. Bottlenecks can be a concern when you have such a wide range of service types, but most of the main lines I rode on have more than 2 tracks, again similar to London. But Paris takes it a step even further, as there are of course dedicated high-speed tracks for TGV services, such as further east on the RER-E and Transilienne P, the LGV-S has separate tracks. But the rest of the suburban services also have 4 tracks of their own, which enables all sorts of stopping patterns and frequency that are really cool. So again, we'll talk about that in the Transilienne video. The suburbs of Paris, or banlieues as they're known, are clearly very important to the functioning of the railway system. But even still, they aren't all the same. Some are much more affluent than others, and some appear to be quite neglected. But high-quality trains do bring the suburbs closer to the city, but sometimes you want to get around the suburbs or even between them without going into the city. The solution that Paris has for this is trams. You don't see that many trams in central Paris compared to many other European cities that are famous for their trams, like Lisbon or Vienna. That's in part because the metro is so dense, but also because retrofitting modern tramways with multi-articulated vehicles into narrow streets is quite a challenge. Where you will find many trams in Paris, though, is indeed in the suburbs or right on the edge of the city, often linking multiple metro and train lines together quicker than a bus. The rights of way are really high quality, with very little street running and lots of green track. You know what's cooler than a suburban tram? A suburban tram train. These things are such a joy to ride, as they smoothly bounce between being a median running tram in the town center, a neighborhood connector off to the side of a road in a low density area, and a straight shot on a rail corridor running 100 kilometers an hour. Most American light rail systems have a lot in common with Parisian tram trains, but there are still some things that they could learn from how Paris does it. Even still, not all the tram trains are exactly the most frequent, and there's a wide mix of operators. Some even have SNCF branding. That's it for all the main rail-based transit around Paris and its suburbs, but of course there's quite a robust bus system too. I didn't film too many buses, but they have very colorful head signs and iconography that really sets it apart from other cities. Metro and train stations often mention specific bus routes under signage, which I find quite nice. What I did ride a lot though was a couple of the lines in the south that could fall under the umbrella of bus rapid transit, even though that's not really a term that you see used in mainland Europe. Instead, especially in French-speaking places, they use the term bus with a high level of service, which is probably more accurate than BRT, albeit less catchy. Payment for just about all the transit in the region can be done using a bank card or the Navigo smart card. It can be loaded with single tickets or multi-day passes, but here where you as a potential visitor might want to listen up for a bit of a travel hack. The Paris Visit Pass is commonly what's branded to tourists, and covers all the rail and bus modes within the Ile-de-France fare zones, including trips to the airports. It will set you back the absolute bargain of, wait, let me check my notes, 78 euros for 5 days? As someone who's used to TfL fares, that doesn't seem that outrageous, but come on! There is a way to get a lot more bang for your buck, though, as Navigo do offer a weekly pass, and I'm guessing is not really intended for tourists. But get this, for 7 whole days, you'll only be set back 32 euros for the exact same pass. Now to get this pass, you do need to either speak to somebody or work your way through the app, both of which require a passport-sized photo, and I'm not entirely sure if it will work for phone numbers from every single country. But if you're intending to get a local SIM, there's an offer that you just cannot refuse. There is a small catch though, this pass is valid not for 7 days, but for 1 week. There is a difference. If your trip spans 2 different calendar weeks, such as from Thursday to Monday, even though that's only 5 days, you will need to buy 2 passes. But even still, the cost of 2 weekly passes, a passport photo, and a cheap SIM is probably similar to the 5-day visit pass, and you get way more travel days out of it. Please don't get scammed. Regardless of what pass you get, you don't need a physical ticket, but I do because I love collecting them like they're Pokemon cards or something. At least on iOS, you're able to load your pass from the app into your Apple Wallet, and the response time on the barriers is usually pretty quick. There are some turnstiles and some barriers with an additional gate that were a little annoying at first, but you get used to them. Paris, like London, doesn't have a single central train station, with 7 termini each serving a different role. There's Gare Saint-Lazare, which was the first one to open, and is mainly a hub for regional trains to Normandy, and quite a few Transilien services. Gare de Lyon connects Paris to, well, Lyon, as well as other destinations to the south of France, Switzerland, Italy, and Spain. Gare Montparnasse doesn't have an RER connection, but it is a major hub for high-speed trains that head out west. Gare d'Austerlitz and Gare de Bercy are much smaller players that I'll be honest, I didn't go to. And finally, there's Gare de l'Est and Gare du Nord, right next to each other, kind of like King's Cross and St. Pancras. Gare de l'Est, unsurprisingly, has lines out to the east of France and through to Germany, and Gare du Nord has, you guessed it, lines that run up to the north and onwards to Belgium, the Netherlands, and of course, Eurostar into Great Britain. And on that note, I was going to make a proper trip report video for Eurostar, but I ended up spending most of my time there asleep, so here's the abridged version. Eurostar is, in a word, tragic. While the facility at St. Pancras does have a solid number of immigration counters, the one at Gare du Nord is really tight. So if you have a weak passport or can't use the e-gates for whatever reason, like me, you'll definitely feel the pain. Thankfully, the E320 is a lovely train, and the standard class seats are quite comfortable with all the basics. It's a Siemens Velaro, similar to the ICE3 in Germany, and some Renfe trains in Spain. However, on my return trip, I was in Eurostar Plus, which is kind of like a first class light. You get, in theory, a better seat and onboard service, but also no additional perks at the station like priority boarding, fast track immigration, or a lounge. That comes with the actual first class Eurostar Premier. Now, I said in theory because the Eurostar Plus seats on the E320, they're an utter disgrace. They are harder than even a Thameslink seat. For an international train and an upgraded experience, and I found Thameslink seats better. Wow. The food that they served was barely edible, and I'll say something that might be controversial. I've had better food in economy class on United Airlines than Eurostar Plus. Please do not upgrade. I only did because there were no more seats in standard class. Aside from the stations not being able to handle capacity, I found the Eurostar website very buggy, and their cancellation policy is not exactly the most flexible. Don't get me wrong, Eurostar is still by far the better way to travel between London and Paris compared to flying, but some parts of the experience were genuinely making me wonder if I should have flown instead. At least airports tend to be built for larger crowds. Some things are out of Eurostar's control, like how the fact that the stations were built 150 plus years ago, but still, don't even get me started on the prices. My trip to Paris may have been bookended by this absolute mess of a rail service, but as you can tell from the first part of the video, I really enjoyed my time there, and can't wait to share it all with you in more detail. So thanks for watching, and a bientôt!